Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Wiltfong Whiparound. Once again, I am filling in for Grace Remington. My name is Lance Glynn, but I'm joined as always by the Director of Recruiting for 24/7 Sports, Mr. Steve Wiltfong. And Steve, a lot of recruiting news over the last couple of days, a lot to look forward to as well with some high-profile spring games happening this weekend. But let's start down south, South Carolina. They landed three commitments on Wednesday. So the Gamecocks, one of the top classes in the country, I think just outside the top five, if not in the top five. Shane Beamer really has things going in 2024, and the Gamecocks they're hot on the trail, Steve.
Yeah, they're number 6 right now, Lance, in the 24/7 Sports Composite Team recruiting rankings. And I just said on the recruiting show on Tuesday that Florida State was the hottest team in the country, but now it is the Gamecocks right now. They went out and landed 3 commitments. Top 247 safety Kelvin Hunter, 24/7 Sports Composite 4-star cornerback Braden Lee, and then high upside offensive lineman Mike Williams, who's Braden Lee's teammate at Upper Marlboro, Maryland, Herbert High. And South Carolina, last year's class, Lance, finished number 16th nationally. That's the second highest that they've ever finished in the 24/7 sports era, going back to 2010. Just one spot behind the 2012 recruiting haul that included guys like Shaq Rowland and Mike Davis, who were all Americans coming up from the high school ranks. Shane Beamer and his staff, they're looking for a lot more here in 2024. They're in the mix for several blue chippers moving forward. Look, this is obviously one of the best offensive line classes in the country as Williams joins a group that includes Cam Pringle and Josiah Thompson. And I've said it before on Whip Around, said it on the recruiting show, going to say it again. There are college coaches that believe that Josiah Thompson is the best offensive line prospect in this class. So for South Carolina to have him in the fold is massive. Cam Pringle's in the fold. They beat Clemson for Blake Franks. Now they have Williams. 2 straight years of just terrific offensive line recruiting for South Carolina as these guys are coming in behind a group that includes Marquis Anderson, who's going to be in South Carolina's 2 deep. Trayvon Ball's not on campus right now, but he's going to arrive in Columbia physically ready to go. I think he's an instant impact offensive lineman that was highly recruited in the SEC. They have Tree Babalati and Jatavius Shivers as part of that class too. So those are 8 guys that I think are SEC caliber. Some are SEC elite. Some have a high upside. That's an exciting group as they've overhauled that offensive line for years to come. Now let's look at this class potentially moving forward. Defensive line, front 7, major point of need for Shane Beamer and company moving forward. And they're in on some elite guys. That starts with 5-star edge rusher Dylan Stewart, who was on the list to visit Colorado early this week. He's not going to be in Boulder this weekend. South Carolina is going to be a contender for Dylan Stewart for the entire process, in my opinion. I've said on this show that I like where Georgia's position, but I'm not sleeping on the Gamecocks. Their way in this one. I think Alabama's way in this one. I envision him ultimately ending up in the SEC, but you have schools like Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State trying to change that. Cameron Fountain's a top 50 recruit from the Peach State that I think South Carolina's in the top 2 alongside Tennessee for. And then Justin Green's a top 100 defensive lineman, number 78 overall, also from the state of Georgia, who loves South Carolina, been over a couple times, and the Gamecocks are in great position for him. So those 3 would be outstanding pickups if they could add them to this class. We talked about Hunter and Lee committing yesterday in the secondary. I think that's moving forward in the defensive backfield. You got 4-star Cameron Michael, who I think South Carolina's in pole position for. They could also easily land Jalewis Solomon from the state of Georgia. The state of Georgia is a big deal for the Gamecocks here this cycle. They're in on a lot of big-time targets from that state. 4-star safety Jarvis Boatwright from the Sunshine State is another major target for them in the secondary. I think South Carolina's in line for some more good news in the backfield soon on offense. That's running back Anthony Carey. Have him crystal balled to South Carolina right now. I think he could be the next one in the fold. And then you have Daniel Hill from Mississippi, Meridian High, who's 220 pounds, as physically impressive a prospect as I've seen, regardless of position, this cycle out on the road covering 7-on-7 events. South Carolina loves him. He's obviously physically ready to play anywhere right now. Just a battering ram. but also a nimble, good athlete that would just bring an exciting element to anyone's backfield. I think South Carolina's in good shape there. They also want some more playmakers on offense, Lance, in that wide receiver room. They were able to flip Mazeo Bennett from Tennessee earlier this cycle. Obviously, they won out for Nicholas Harbor at the end of the last cycle. Jonathan Paler's a guy that they're all in for as they battle North Carolina, Clemson, and several others. But look, here's one thing we know for sure. South Carolina, exciting to follow yesterday. Going to be fun to follow the rest of this 2024 cycle.
Yeah, they certainly will be. And Shane Beamer has done such a good job since he got there to boost South Carolina recruiting. And I was looking as you were talking, and one of the big things that I'm sure he's focused on, as well as the entire staff, is in state. And South Carolina right now, I looked at the top 7 players in state. South Carolina has 5 of them committed, including the top 3, according to the top 247 rankings. And obviously, that's so
Well,
big when you're battling like Clemson in state.
yeah, and when you beat Clemson to end the season last year, and you beat Tennessee to end the season last year, and those are programs that you're going toe to toe with guys on the trail. Now you're starting to see the recruiting returns. Can you beat Tennessee for Cameron Fountain? That's a very interesting head to head recruitment that's going to be pivotal for who's winning SEC games down the road. But South Carolina really ended that season strong with a couple big time wins against an SEC rival and then an in-state rival, and the returns are certainly coming in on the trail.
Yeah, so Shane Beamer doing a very good job. South Carolina is just outside the top 5 in the 2024 ranking. Still early, but again, cleaning up in state right now. And of course, they are still looking to add top talent to that class. Another school that is potentially on the verge of a couple commits, that's Oklahoma. Obviously, a great class in Brent Venables' first full cycle last year. On the field, a little bit of a different story, but they're looking to, of course, better themselves there, and of course looking to put together a second strong class. So what's the latest you're hearing out of Norman when it comes out of this 2024 cycle?
Yeah, it's only a matter of time before they get hot. They're closing in on a couple of commitments. One of them is Fulton, Mississippi offensive tackle Isaiah Autry, who's going to announce his commitment Friday at 1 p.m. We're recording Thursday morning, so he may have announced. You guys know that sometimes a commitment time and then a commitment announcement, sometimes they'll go hand in hand, but I actually think this one will go down on time. I love where Oklahoma stands for Isaiah Autry as they battle Auburn, Florida State, and Ole Miss, among others. For him, 6'6", 280 pounds. A lot of trait there for Bill Beatenbaugh, who's one of the best offensive line coaches in America, to mold there. And then Jaden Hardy is a top 247 safety from Lewisville, Texas, who's going to be on campus this weekend. And I just love the way that's setting up for the Sooners as they recruit against Tennessee and several others. For him, a playmaker in the secondary, can play safety, nickel, or on an island, a guy that Brett Venables and company covet as they try and turn around a defense that ranked like 129th in college football last year. They've already started that rebuild with an awesome 2023 class that ranked top 5 nationally with a lot of difference makers on defense, particularly in the secondary. And Jaden Hardy's another guy that I think would give them a huge boost.
Yeah, he really would. And again, Brent Venables trying to turn Oklahoma's fortunes on the field. But that 2023 recruiting class, was very strong, looking to build off of that and have a very strong 2024 class. So some guys to watch for Oklahoma as their decisions may come sooner and sooner. Notre Dame, their spring game is coming up. It was a tale of really 2 halves of the season for Marcus Freeman last year. A tough start. I think they were 3-3 through 6 games, if I remember correctly, last year, but then finished really strong to end the season. Of course, brought in Sam Hartman, so that quarterback play is going to be elevated for the Irish in 2024. They put together a strong class last cycle, trying to, like Oklahoma, continue that this cycle. What are you hearing heading into Notre Dame's spring game and all the players that could be attending and checking out South Bend?
Yeah, Notre Dame's seeking a fourth straight top 10 recruiting class, Lance. They are number 8 right now, heading into a weekend that's going to have a lot to say on if they finish in the top 10 come December and February. 4-star offensive lineman Styles Prescott from in-state Indianapolis area, Hamilton Southeastern, is back for a second straight weekend. He also visited in January, where he was offered. Irish Illustrated insider Tom Loy and myself love our Notre Dame predictions for Styles Prescott coming into a return trip where I think he's excited to get around Notre Dame's commits, see how he fits in with those guys. And I think that's one of the last box to check for him, as Notre Dame has a lot of the things he's looking for, from proximity to offensive line tradition to just playing in the biggest games, academics, small campus, a lot of things standing out to Notre Dame a lot of things standing out about Notre Dame for Styles Prescott. Warner Robins High, four-star receiver Isaiah Canyon's going to be back on campus. He was at Notre Dame in March. This is a young man that's at the top of Notre Dame's board, regardless of position. 6'4". He can absolutely run. And Lance, we've seen Notre Dame have a lot of success with receivers of this body type, from Miles Boykin to Chase Claypool to the Equinemius St. Brown, just those bigger bodied outside receivers that can run, that are matchup problems. Isaiah Canyon fits that mold to a certain degree. And I like where Notre Dame stands with him coming into this visit. Bodie Calhoun is a linebacker from Virginia that Notre Dame looks to be on the short list for. Same goes with Davis Andrews, an athlete recruit from Utah. He had a great visit to Notre Dame in January. He's back. Another prospect that we have Notre Dame crystal balled for is defensive lineman Bryce Young. His father, Bryant Young, is maybe the best Notre Dame player of our lives. He was on that 93 team that was robbed of a national championship, but he was an All-American, first-round draft pick, now in the NFL Hall of Fame. Notre Dame is in great position for Bryce Young. Kingston Biamo Asa is a top 247 linebacker we've talked about in the past that Notre Dame's well positioned for. And then Bryce Young's teammate, four-star receiver Micah Gilbert, also expected on campus. A couple more names I want to mention. Benedict Ume is a top 247 defensive lineman. He is as physically strong at the point of attack as anybody in the country on the defensive front. I think Notre Dame could make a move there. Grant Bricks is a top 247 offensive lineman that it looks like Notre Dame's in good position for as well. So a lot of other names to catch that'll be in South Bend this weekend on Irish Illustrated with Tom Loy and the guys. But Notre Dame poised for a big recruiting weekend. I think they're ultimately going to land several of these guys as they pursue another top 10 class.
Yeah, Notre Dame trying to stay in that top 10. And now, Steve, I said on Monday's show that I was bad at geography, but listen to what I'm about to do here. Okay, ready? So we started at South Carolina. We went a little bit west to Oklahoma. I think I'm on the right trail. Then we went back up north to Notre Dame. Then we went back up north to
Ish.
Notre Dame. Now, ish, closer to you. That's your neck of the woods. Now we're going back down south where we started, but not to South Carolina. We're going to LSU. LSU's spring game is this weekend. They have a top 5 class right now, trying to keep up that momentum that they have. Brian Kelly, a very successful year one, getting to the SEC title game, obviously beating Alabama in that process too. They're trying to continue to add talent. They're trying to continue to add star power. Like I said, a top 5 class right now. Who are you looking forward to seeing down there in Baton Rouge at LSU spring game this weekend?
Yeah, so I think that they're on commitment watch this weekend as Deshaun McBride announces his college commitment on Saturday. LSU trending heavy on the 24/7 Sports crystal ball for the top 247 in-state safety. Kerry Cooks, Joe Sloan and company leading the charge there. This young man can really run, just an explosive player on the back end. Picked off 9 passes, so a playmaker that's very athletic. Love the sight, love the sound of that for a program that has such rich tradition in the secondary. Deshaun McBride has a lot of traits to get you fired up if he ultimately picks LSU this weekend. Dominic McKinley, 5-star, number 1 player in the state, defensive lineman. He's expected back on campus. Wardell Mack, top 247 cornerback. He's also trending towards LSU on the 24/7 Sports crystal ball. Devin Smith, a linebacker out of Brunswick, Georgia, is a guy that they've offered in January and are pushing extremely hard for. Caleb Odens, a top 247 tight end from Carrollton, Georgia, that's slated to be there. They're working to get Terrence Hibbler back to campus. He's a defensive lineman from Mississippi. Tylen Singleton is an in-state linebacker that LSU's all in on. LSU recruited nationally last year, Lance, as you know, had some big in-state wins, but they're really focused on the area this cycle. Tylen Singleton is a guy that's really shot up the board for them. 2026 quarterback Julian Lewis is going to be there. He's as coveted a prospect in any class. The Max Preps Freshman of the Year nationally, already been selected to play in the All-America Bowl. His recruitment's already starting to take shape. I think USC's in a great spot for Julian Lewis. He was just at Texas A&M, Alabama and Georgia. He's frequented. LSU, he's been talking to him a lot. Excited to get over there and check out the spring game as well. And look,
Yeah.
Colin Simmons is a guy that is not going to Colorado this weekend. We mentioned that with Dylan Stewart. So I know LSU and other schools are trying to get five-star Colin Simmons to campus this weekend. Had a story on him this week. Talked to his mom. Recently loved the visit to TCU. This is kind of a bonus nugget. We didn't even have Colin Simmons on the script coming in, Lance, but they had an amazing trip to TCU recently. They love the strength coach at TCU. TCU's been in the mix for Colin Simmons for a while, coming off great trips to Florida and Miami. It sounds like Miami's rising up the board, talking to his mom. Florida is a school slated to get him back in June, so mom can see it. She was not in Gainesville. She was not in Coral Gables. But LSU is certainly in the mix. Texas is in the mix. The Aggies are in the mix. TCU's in the mix. Tennessee also in the mix. Alabama for Colin Simmons, the number one edge rusher, number 3 player overall for the 24/7 Sports Composite.
Look, there's nothing wrong with going off script, Steve. Sometimes you have the most fun when you go off script. When things change just in the blink of an eye. And that's what we did here. That's what we did with Colin Simmons. We're going to head back on script now, and my geography is going to continue. We're going to head as far out west as we have on today's show. And there is no spring game that's probably had as much hype as Colorado's. So, with Coach Prime there, with a lot of people having their eyes on Boulder, what are you looking forward to when it comes to recruiting, when it comes with Colorado's spring game this weekend?
Yeah, so their spring game weekend kind of kicks off today when Boo Carter, 24/7 Sports Composite 4-star athlete from Chattanooga, arrives. He's going to be out there with both his parents. And today, I mean Thursday, as we record. By the time you're listening to this on Friday, he'll have already been there a full day. But he's coming with his parents. It's his mom's first time, dad's second time. He was out there earlier this spring. Tennessee's the crystal ball favorite for Boo Carter, but Colorado should not be slept on in this recruitment, especially with the 3-day visit. And he's going to get a lot of one-on-one time with Coach Deion Sanders, just being one of the few prospects that's going to be on campus on Thursday. Another prospect that's coming in on Thursday is one of their most coveted commits, Juwan Johnson, a 4-star athlete out of Louisiana that LSU still fighting for to flip. He's coming in on Thursday. So for him to get back around Coach Prime and the staff and everybody at Colorado is going to be big for Juwan Johnson in Colorado. Arriving late Thursday, early Friday from California is Aaron Butler, top 247 athlete, number 65 player overall in the 24/7 sports rankings. Oregon is trending on the crystal ball. Greg Biggins and I have forecasts for the Ducks, but we're not sleeping on Colorado coming into what's going to be an extended weekend visit for Aaron Butler. He's been to campus before, so this is about just getting a chance to sit down with the staff and get to see the vision and talk about this vision of what Colorado football is going to look like over the next couple years and what kind of impact Aaron Butler and Boo Carter can have on it. That's exciting. And then certainly this weekend, they're going to have a lot of big-time guys on campus that they covet. Players like Danny Okoye, who's one of the most sought-after edge players in the region. Brandon Davis Swain is a top 247 defensive lineman from the state of Michigan that's going to be on campus as well. Williams Nwaneri is the biggest name, 5-star defensive lineman, number 2 player overall. From Lee Summit, Missouri. He's going to be taking his first look at Colorado. Sterling Dixon's a top 247 linebacker committed to Alabama, but he's got a great relationship with Charles Kelly, who's obviously Colorado's defensive coordinator, was at Alabama. Corey Phillips, who comes over from LSU, recruited him, so he's got some connections on the staff. But it's Tawaski Abrams is a receiver committed to Florida State, who can absolutely run. And then you have Jordan Johnson, Rebel, top 247 cornerback from IMG Academy. It's a star-studded list of prospects that's going to be at Colorado this weekend. And also, look, you're going to want to follow Chris Hummer's work because Colorado bringing in a lot of guys from the portal this weekend. So I know they're trying to rip and roar in that regard as well.
Yeah, with the transfer portal window, of course, now once again open, there may not be a team as busy in the second one as Colorado, and they certainly took the top spot in terms of busyness in the first portal window. Them and Arizona State were sort of fighting for who was going to take in the most transfers. I think Colorado ended up edging them out by a couple. I think they both took over 20. But you got to think in the second window that Colorado was going to be just as active, maybe not 20, but they're going to take a good number of transfers to turn over that roster and really build for this 2023 season. One name you mentioned that's heading to Colorado is Williams Nwaneri. He's the number one defensive lineman in the 2024 class, a five-star out of the state of Missouri. What's the latest on his recruitment as obviously visits start to ramp up and as the cycle continues to progress?
Yeah, and by now, hopefully, you saw us talk about Williams Nwaneri on the 24/7 Sports Recruiting Show Thursday. We also have the War Daddy feature on him on the 24/7 Sports site by now. But if you didn't catch it, just kind of catching you up on his recruitment. Georgia's in line for an official visit the first weekend of June. It's not locked in, but they're still trying to make a move with him after a really good visit this spring. Two schools that I think are in excellent position. Look, Oklahoma's had a lot of buzz in this recruitment. They're obviously one of them. His relationships with Coach Chavis and Coach Bates in Norman are second to none. He's been there numerous times, loves Brent Venables and the vision of that program. But Lance, I may give the edge to Tennessee right now, my friend. I think the Vols, he's been there a couple times, feels extremely comfortable at Tennessee. His coach, Coach Mosey, played with Josh Heupel in college. There's just a lot of connections, a lot of stuff from a relational standpoint. And he told me that when he's on campus, everything clicks. He can see himself going there. I think the Vols are in a great spot for him. And this recruitment, maybe if they can win out for him, it kind of reminds me of the big recruiting win that they had in 2023, David Hobbs to beat Georgia, to beat Alabama for a coveted defensive end like David Hobbs. If they can do it again this cycle with Williams Nwaneri, what a massive recruiting win that would be for Tennessee as they chase a second straight top 10 class themselves. But those aren't the only contenders. Don't sleep on Oregon. Oregon's way in that one as well. So is Missouri. He's been there a bunch. He's at Colorado this weekend, so maybe they can make a move. Nebraska's also on the short list, but when I look up at the top of this list, I see Tennessee and Oklahoma. I see Georgia in an interesting position, and then the other programs trying to make a move.
Wow, Steve. Rocky Top. What are the Big Orange? I think they refer to themselves as well. I don't know. A lot of people in our Nashville office may have a better clue on what Tennessee's various nicknames are. But wow, that would be an impressive, really impressive get for Josh Heupel. And we know how well they recruit offensively, but defensively has largely
They've been
been
recruiting
the
on
the
defense.
unit.
I love the way they've
Yeah,
been
yeah.
recruiting on the last couple cycles, my brother. And I think their defense was 50 last year. It was like close to 100 the year before. That could all be way
You see the
inaccurate.
steady improvement. The steady improvement
But
is there for sure, and a guy like Williams Nwaneri, I mean, that would just take it to a whole nother level. I mean, talk about a star, talk about a star power, and talk about a guy who can come in. I think right away, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a guy who can come in and make an impact, pretty soon upon his arrival. That would be a huge get for Tennessee, and I like your David Hobbs comparison too, having to beat out and Steve, we've talked about this plenty. If you want to win national championships, you need to win against teams that are also competing for national championships on the recruiting trail. Tennessee has been doing that the last couple of cycles under Josh Heupel. This would be another opportunity for a win with Williams Nwaneri. So, a lot of excitement in Rocky Top in Knoxville surrounding Tennessee. And man, that would be quite the get for them if they're able to get Williams Nwaneri to join the fold in 2024. Couple more spring games we want to talk about, or one more spring game we want to talk about, and then another school that has yet to have their spring game. But Alabama's spring game is this weekend. The Crimson Tide, always expected to be towards the top of the team recruiting rankings, usually number one when all is said and done. But they're looking to build to their, or add to their 2024 class, I should say. So what's the latest you're hearing coming out of Tuscaloosa ahead of this Alabama spring game?
yeah, so Bama Online insider Hank South has a good list over there on the Alabama site, and just highlighting a couple of those names. Five-star linebacker DeMarcus Riddick, longtime commit to Georgia. Both Alabama and Auburn are giving him a lot to think about in that regard, and certainly the Crimson Tide could ultimately flip him, as could the Tigers. Jeremiah Beeman from in-state there, Parker High. He's also got his official visit slated for Auburn the weekend of June 6th, or excuse me, for Alabama the weekend of June 16th. He's also got a Clemson official for June 2nd, but obviously super high on Alabama's made several visits there. Jaden Riddell, expected back in Tuscaloosa. Obviously, I recently put in a prediction for Georgia for him, but you also have Alabama and Tennessee way in that one. All three of those schools have June official visits scheduled. But he's been to Alabama a couple times already, so this would be, I think, his third time on campus. He's been to a couple games there, or he's been to a game, then returned in the winter slash spring, and now we're in the spring slash summer. I don't know the seasons here, but certainly they got a great shot at Jaden Riddell. Daniel Calhoun's a massive offensive lineman from the state of Georgia that they're battling. Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, among others for him. And his dad played at Alabama. Legacy recruit Jordan Ross is a five-star edge from in-state that we're super high on at 24/7 Sports, that he obviously has Alabama near the top of his list. Last time he was at Alabama, he talked about the time spent with the players and how he just enjoyed hearing about their experiences in Tuscaloosa so far. And then the number one recruit in the country in 2025, David Sanders, expected. He was just at Ohio State for a great visit last weekend. I think a couple visits to Georgia has put Georgia in really good position there. But Alabama's been a school that he's mentioned in every breath when you ask him about the schools on his short list. And so here he is at Alabama this weekend to take a look at the Crimson Tide.
So yeah, the Tide looking to not only build on 2024, but also on 2025. And of course, there are very few, if any, more coveted prospects in that 2025 class than David Sanders, as you mentioned, just at Ohio State. Now looking to go to Alabama and check them out as well. One more team we're going to talk about before we get into a little five-star buzz. That's Oregon. The Ducks trying to get things rolling, or trying to get things to continue to roll on the recruiting trail. Obviously, a very strong finish in the 2023 class that leapt then into 2024. So what can you tell us about what Dan Lanning and his staff are doing out there, and what you're expecting from the Ducks on the trail this weekend?
Well, they're number 11 right now. Obviously, one of their biggest recruiting wins recently was Aaron Flowers beating USC for the top 247 safety from the Lone Star State. And they're in the hunt for some big time guys, some guys that they covet moving forward in this process. Still like them for Justin Williams, the number 2 linebacker in the country out of the Lone Star State, but that recruitment has gotten heated. At quarterback, things seem to be picking up with Michael Van Buren following another visit to Eugene. I think that was his third time out at Oregon this past weekend. Oregon in good shape for him and Luke Moga. Last week I would have told you I liked the position better for Luke Moga. Today I might say I like the position better for Michael Van Buren, but they're certainly in the mix. Oregon quarterback is a big need for them. Bo Nix, they bring back one of the top passers in college football, but there's not much depth behind him. So they could certainly use 2 quarterbacks this cycle, near the top of the list for 2 guys that they covet. Looking for playmakers at wideout, they have Jordan Anderson committed. He's one of the nation's best. Love where they stand with Dylan Grisham, a composite 4-star from San Jacinto there in California. This young man had 90 receptions for 2,051 yards and 31 touchdowns. He can run. He's a big play guy. Oregon trending on the crystal ball for him. I think he makes an early summer decision. Like the way that's going for the Ducks. This offensive line class has been coming together for them. Fox Craters, in the fold. They recently had one of their favorite guys on campus in Eddie Pierre-Louis. I think that Oregon is the one to beat right now for Jaquan McRoy. Obviously they're swinging at Brandon Baker, Williams Nwaneri. We talked about him. Christian Clark is a running back that they covet. But circling back to receiver here for a second, Jordan Anderson's committed. They're trending for Dylan Grisham. Like I said earlier in the show, Greg Biggins and I have Aaron Butler forecasted to Oregon on the crystal ball as well. They got to get through this visit to Colorado this weekend, but to land those three pass catchers from the state of California, that would be an elite West Coast haul for the Ducks if they could pull that off. And look, they're in on some other big time guys moving forward. When you're talking about, Williams Nwaneri, I think they're in the top five there. Elijah Rushing, they're pushing for a 5-star edge from Arizona. Ryan Wingo, I think they'll get an official visit from the 5-star receiver from Missouri. Dakota Fields, they're trending for him on the 24/7 Sports Crystal Ball, top 247 cornerback from Sarah. I got the Ducks forecasted there for him. So Oregon, a fun team to follow as they chase another top 10 class.
Yeah, Oregon's always a fun team to follow, and they were at the end of last cycle, and they continue to be so right now. Dan Lanning doing a great job out there recruiting in Eugene. So, Steve, no more teams, but there's a ton of 5-star buzz that you want to unload for the 2024 class. So let's do a little bit of a whip around. Take it away, my friend. What are you hearing from some of these 2024 5-star prospects?
Yeah, Andrew Ivins, Cooper Patagna, Gabe Brooks, Chris Singletary, they led the charge in the 24/7 Sports rankings update, where we went from 100 ranked prospects to 247 and beyond for the first time in 2025. And with that, I wrote a story on where things stand with the top 10 uncommitted guys. So David Sanders, first player mentioned, number one overall. I think Georgia has put themselves in great position, but Ohio State, Alabama, South Carolina, Florida, Clemson, Michigan, North Carolina, some others in there. Elijah Griffin, he's number 2 in our rankings. He's number 1 in the composite rankings when you add up all the industry rankings into one. I think Georgia is also the one to beat for him right now. South Carolina would be 1B. Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Florida State, Ohio State, Texas A&M. Some other schools that are in play there. Armando Blunt is our number 4 ranked player in the country from the Sunshine State. Defensive lineman. Florida State has really, I think, set the tone in that recruitment early. Also likes the Gators. Miami will do what they can to keep him home. Alabama, Colorado, Ohio State, some of the other programs mentioned with him. Decorian Moore, number 5 player in the land. He's told me he was aiming to be at Colorado spring game this weekend. Not sure if that still happens. LSU's prominent with him. Oregon, Oklahoma, Texas, TCU, SMU, some of the others. And then a source close to him said, keep an eye on Clemson for Decorian Moore. Number 1 quarterback in the country is Bryce Underwood. We talked about him on Monday's Whip Around, but I like where LSU stands. He's got a 3-day LSU return visit scheduled after a multi-day LSU visit earlier this year. But Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State, USC just was offered by Florida. So a lot of other schools in the mix there. Zion Grady's our number 7 player in the country, edge rusher from Alabama. He told me he likes what Georgia, Alabama, and Florida State are doing early in his recruitment. Naeem Offord's our number 1 ranked corner from the state of Alabama. And he said Georgia, Clemson, Bama, Ole Miss are catching his eye early in his process. Anquan Fegans is our number 1 safety, number 10 player overall. LSU came out hot for him. Since then, a recent visit to Clemson moved the needle. Georgia gets a visit on Friday. Tennessee, Florida State, Colorado, Oregon, 4 others in there as well. Yosei Epinesa from Illinois. Iowa's always going to be a contender. His dad played there. His older brother played there. But he's been to Miami a couple times now. Keep an eye on the Hurricanes and that recruitment. Joe Salavea, extremely close with that family. They go back a long time. Utah got a visit this spring. So did Colorado, Michigan, Oregon, Washington, Notre Dame, some others there. And then DJ Pickett, number 2 safety in the land, number 12 player overall, was just at Georgia last weekend. Loved Georgia's position. He's trying to get back to Michigan this weekend. Love Michigan's position. I think those two have set themselves apart from some other programs in there like Texas, Texas A&M, Clemson, South Carolina, Ohio State, Bama, Florida State, Miami. So that's the rundown on 2025. Those guys are not household names yet, but they eventually will be on Whip Around.
Steve, I need to throw a flag on myself because I said right before I teed you up 2024 when you talked about 2025 guys. So that is on me. I take full responsibility, but hey, we all have those days every once in a while, right? Where we have a little bit of a slip of tongue. I said 2024. We're so used to 2024 and
Well,
we need to start getting more used to 2025.
maybe Jason, our producer back there, will save us with an edit there when it pops up there when they start editing this together. So,
Oh man. But look, I have to throw the flag on myself. I admit it. It was my fault. I said 2024. I should have said 2025, but it happens again. We all have those days. We move on and we continue on. Well, unfortunately, I guess I should say, we're not going to continue on because no more information left on today's episode. But before we go, there are two things I want to let everyone watching know. And the first one being that the college football recruiting show, usually on Tuesdays and Thursdays, will now be Monday and Thursday, starting this coming Monday. The time will remain the same, 5 Eastern, 4 Central on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. But I just want to repeat again, the college football recruiting show, which is usually Tuesdays and Thursdays, starting on Monday, which is Monday, I think the 24th, will now be every Monday and Thursday, and again at 5 Eastern, 4 Central on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. The second thing, Wiltfong Whiparound, starting on Monday's show, will now be a part of the college football recruiting show. So to hear all the latest recruiting news and info from Steve that we all love, make sure to tune into the show once again every Monday and Thursday at 5 Eastern. Again, Wiltfong Whiparound now will be a part of the football recruiting show. So all of that great information that Steve has, make sure to tune in to the college football recruiting show on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel every Monday and Thursday at 5 Eastern. But that'll do it from us here on this Friday. This Wiltfong Whiparound has been completed. Steve, as always, appreciate talking to you, my friend, and appreciate talking to all of you. Have a good weekend. Enjoy Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We'll see you again on Monday.